Good evening. My name is Mike Flynn. Welcome to the Big River Training Team panel discussion on nutrition and race day preparation. I'm the store manager at Big River Running Company's University City location, and I'm also the program director for Big River's community training programs. I'm joined this evening by Alan from Brooks, Jacob from GU, and Lisa, who's a representative for GU and Features, as well as the race director for the Hospital Hill Half Marathon in Kansas City. And our panel is going to be talking with you about these topics of race day preparation, including a deeper dive into nutrition, so that we can have you prepared for your races coming up later this spring. Alan, if you'd like to briefly introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. My name is Alan Walker. I am the Brooks guru for the territory here of Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, Iowa. So I cover anybody that has Brooks there. On the flip side, when I take off my Brooks hat, I am a runner by nature. I'm currently training for the Boston Marathon. I'm looking for a little bit of redemption from the last time I was there. And this will be my 7th marathon. I'm still trying to figure out the process as we go.
And Lisa.
Hello, I'm Lisa Drake, and I am, as Mike mentioned, representative for Features and GU, but my other hats are as a race director, and that's what I'll be mostly talking to you about tonight about. And I have the half marathon, as he mentioned, a 10K, 5K at the Hospital Hill Run, and then I also have the Zoo Run, which is a 4 mile and a 1 mile in Kansas City as well. So.
And then Jacob.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. My name's Jacob. I work for GU Energy Labs. Been employed with them for about 5 years. I started out as a tech rep educator, worked my way into business development, which is what I'm doing now. I've been out to Big River Running actually with Lisa doing this same very thing. My background is in exercise and nutrition science. I have a master's degree from the University of Tampa. I'm an avid exerciser. At one point in time, I fancied myself as an Ironman athlete and marathoner and all sorts of crazy long distance. So I've done it. I kind of know how treacherous it can be, but I still do those things, just not in that sort of length and duration. But hopefully you guys will gain something from my storytelling tonight.
Great, thank you all. So just as a general kind of framework for this evening, we did receive a number of questions that were submitted on the RSVP form. Some of those responses are going to get woven into the presentation, and then some of those will circle back and address the questions specifically toward the end. But to start us out, we are just going to talk about race day preparation in general, because we do want you showing up at the start line ready to go. And I think we all know that that can be kind of a nervous experience. I remember my first marathon, I showed up, I didn't really know what to expect. I was this giant ball of nervous energy. I'm in my start corral, and then my phone started ringing. And I looked at it and I saw the caller ID and I was like, why is Ryan calling me at 6 whatever in the morning? And I answered the phone and he's like, where are you? And I was like, I'm downtown. Where are you? And he's like, we're downtown. No, like, where are you? We're here to see you start your race. And it was kind of the greatest thing ever, because they actually came up, they met me on the side of the start corral, and we talked for the few minutes leading up to the race, and they walked with me down to the start line. And I started, I was like, oh, I'm good. And all those nerves went away. And unfortunately, that's obviously not an experience that everybody can have on race day, but there are things that we can do to put ourselves into a good space, both mentally and physically, to be prepared. So Brian Trauber, our training team coach, unfortunately was not able to join us this evening, but there were a couple points that Brian shared that I want to hit on. And one of those, and this is a theme we'll be hitting on throughout the evening, is we really want to practice our nutrition and our hydration on long runs in advance. In general, we don't want to be doing anything new on race day. We want to be wearing shoes we've run in before, socks we've run in before, shorts, top, everything we're wearing on our body should be familiar to us. And anything that we're carrying or eating or drinking during the race should also be familiar to us as best as possible, so that we're not getting those surprises during the race. Let's go around. Any other quick tips that people would like to share as far as pre-race advice?
I have some thoughts just from a race director point of view. When people are new to races, but even veteran racers, the race directors go to a lot of effort to put out a lot of information that will really help you for pre-race. So read the information. I know it's, could be boring or something, but you'll learn, like, maybe there's some construction, where do you need to park? You just want to get there maybe an hour early so you have time to find the porta potties, to go to the restroom, to stretch and to warm up and find the finish line, the start line. So, take the time to do some education and preparation prior, and I think that will really help. The other thing I was going to recommend is maybe drive the course. Even if it's a course that you have run on many times, it could have changed because of construction, but definitely drive the course and even locate on the maps maybe where the aid stations are, so you know what to expect and when to expect them. And then and also kind of learn where the nutrition will be on the course in case so and you can plan when you might need it. So those are just a couple thoughts I had as far as pre-race, just to be a little more prepared.
And I really want to reiterate Lisa's last point there about where the aid stations are on the course. After I'd run a few marathons, I started developing this habit of actually writing across the top of the back of my bib where all the water stops were. And then I'd circle the ones that were handing out on-course nutrition. If it was a product that I was planning to take and use, I'd make some other marks on the back of my bib for my nutrition and hydration plan for the race. And that was really helpful, both in terms of remembering when those things were next going to be available, because we all know in the middle of our long run, we're getting tired, the brain gets a little foggy. But I also found racing that way that it was breaking the race up into chunks. I wasn't worried about 16 more miles anymore. It was, okay, in 2.5 miles, I get the next aid station. I'm drinking water at that stop. And then 1.7 miles after that, I get to take a gel, or so on throughout the rest of the race. And it kind of made it more manageable. So that's a really good piece of advice. Alan, did you have anything you'd like to share?
I think like Jacob's going to talk on the nutrition side of things here, but I think early in the morning, eliminating as many variables as possible, such as like what breakfast you're comfortable eating, if you're going to eat some, and that side of things, as well as checking the weather. I made the cardinal mistake this winter at CIM and thinking the temperatures would be great. I didn't bring any chafe cream on there, and I paid the price in the end. So just kind of pay attention to not just the temperature, but what the humidity is like as well too. So just kind of trying to eliminate those type of variables as much as possible.
Yeah, and the nutrition part, as far as dinner the night before, eating that morning, that's all stuff that we'll let Jacob dive into, and then we'll circle back to. But we shouldn't only be thinking of pre-races necessarily that morning. Throughout our whole training block, we do want to be thinking about the race. So when we're doing our long runs, be thinking about nutrition, thinking about hydration, practicing those on the long runs. If we're thinking about footwear and what shoes we might be wearing on race day, and this is something Alan and I might circle back to toward the end, we want to get those in advance so we can get a couple long runs and workouts logged in those shoes to make sure that nothing funky is going to happen or there's going to be any surprises. We also want to just think about our mindset and our goals leading up to the race. So it's great to have goals, but there's different types of goals. Some of the goals are things that are largely within our control, and other goals that are more outcome-based, sometimes things are outside of our control. And so if we set a goal saying like, I want to place in the top 3 in my age group, and then you show up and a really competitive field comes to the race that year, you might still run a personal best time and not place in your age group. So we just want to keep those goals in perspective and maybe frame that more as, I want to run a PR, and ideally that would result in me placing in my age group. Or the goal might be, I want to finish the race. Or the goal might be, I want to follow this run walk interval throughout the race and execute that flawlessly. And that's actually the type of goal that's very much within your control and can often lead to those good results. So we have those more outcome and performance-based goals that I hit on, but these process goals are really good things that we can have for ourselves because we can control those. I'm going to follow this nutrition plan. I'm going to follow this hydration strategy. I'm going to use this run walk interval, or I'm going to make sure that I keep my heart rate effort at a certain level through mile 16 of the marathon. And then I'm willing to open it up a little bit on the last 5 to 10 miles. Those process goals can translate to success. And those are, of course, course things too that we can rehearse ahead of time. We also want to prioritize sleep. That's really important. A common misconception is that the sleep the night before the race is the most important. And there's some articles and there's some literature that actually says it's really the night before the race. So if your race is Sunday morning, it's really the Friday night into Saturday sleep. Try to get a really, really good night's sleep that night. Be well rested. Yeah, it's natural to have some nerves Saturday night when you go to bed, or you might have to wake up really, really early Sunday morning, but try to be rested in advance of that. Lay out your race day kit the night before. So lay it out, pin your bib on, make sure that you know what you're wearing, that everything's accounted for. I'm a big fan of lists, especially if you're traveling out of town for a race, so that you don't get there and be like, uh-oh, I left my anti-chafe product at home and now I need to go and see what I can find. And maybe it's something you haven't tried before and hopefully it works, but maybe it doesn't. And then obviously nutrition, this pre-race meal, what to eat in the days leading up to the race is something that we're about to delve into. So at this point, I'm going to turn things over to Jacob. So Jacob, you should be the host now and have the ability to share your screen.
I appreciate it. You guys can give me a thumbs up if you can see this. Nice. And I will add, I love that conversation of morning of, night before, 2 nights before. Mike, I think you're dead on. The race is Sunday, Friday night sleep is most important. Alan nailed it with simplicity. I think I could say that 150 times throughout this presentation, and it would still be the most important thing, but the most ignored. I think people tend to overcomplicate their breakfast or their race kit or just certain things that shouldn't be overcomplicated. And what I will add in, nutrition is one of those things like shoes and socks, etc., that you don't want to mess with. You've trained 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks, maybe longer for an event. You want to know what's being used on course. You want to know if you're using what is on course or what you've been training with. And then I'll add in, Alan touched on CIM marathon. You might think the weather will be one thing, or you've been training in a certain climate and then the race is completely different. And you might need to tweak your nutrition, because if it's cold and you've been training in warm weather, then you're going to have a different outcome, especially if your plan is to fuel as if it's 90 degrees, 90% humidity, but it turns out to be 45 degrees, 60% humidity. You can't fuel the same way that you've been training with. So you need to know little things that we'll cover throughout this presentation, hopefully draw on that knowledge and that experience that some of us have to say, if it's warmer or if it's colder, I'll change my game plan like so. So we'll dive in, and in terms of questions, I know we have a few at the end. You can interrupt me. I won't be offended, or save your question to the end. Either way, doesn't matter to me. So obviously, working at GU Energy Labs, this presentation will have a GU Energy lean to it. However, the bulk of my presentation will be about nutrition as a whole. I'm not here to tell you that GU Energy Labs makes the best products offered to runners in running stores. I do believe that, but I'm not here to say that to you. There's plenty of products, just like exercises, training plans, running shoes. Brooks might be the best running shoe for the majority of people. However, there's going to be 1 or 2 people, a handful of people, that Brooks or GU Energy products or Feature socks may not work for a single person. And so what works for me might not work for you, but from a general scientific standpoint, we will cover things that tend to work for the majority of people. And so GU Energy Labs, we've been in business for nearly 30 years. We're the creator of the original energy gel. That's pretty much where we started. As the story goes, the founder of the company created the energy gel. And you might be familiar with it. We have GU Energy and we have Roctane Energy. Same thing. Roctane is, we'll get into it, but it's more electrolytes, more amino acids. The founder of the company created that for his daughter. specifically for 100-mile ultra marathons. After that, shortly thereafter, it became chocolate and vanilla energy gel. Maybe 10, 15 years later, created hydration products, recovery products, and now we have a line of nutrition products for whatever type of fueling you might do. I hear this all the time. The energy gel is too thick. Not a super fan of the energy gel. Well, now we have a liquid energy gel. We also have pure drink hydration products. You can drink your nutrition. You can eat your nutrition. You can chew your nutrition. We have everything that one can think of. And along with that came the family of flavors. So our energy gel is our best-selling product. It's our pride and joy. And so we will get into a little bit more about processed foods versus non-processed when it comes to exercise nutrition or sports nutrition in this case. And it boils down to when you're running, when you're exercising, and for this sake of conversation, when you're running a marathon, you could be in great shape and your body still think that it's being attacked. I'm sure everyone has heard of the fight or flight response. So when you're running and you're in zone 1 or 2, heart rate wise, your body doesn't sense that as much as stressor or it's under attack or it's being killed. However, when you go zone 3 and 4 and you've felt the nerves and the anxiety and the heat and the effort that you're putting out, especially when you get mile 16 and on, you need things that are easily digestible. Your body doesn't have to work very hard to break it down. You need simple, simple, simple. And that's where the energy gel comes into play. It's one ounce of carbohydrates, sugars, amino acids, electrolytes, everything your body is using. It has in that 1 ounce packet. And yes, we suggest it's very crucial that you take it with water. I would never suggest taking it without water. It is sticky. And then when you're running, you're breathing out of your mouth and your mouth gets dry. So this combination of difficulties and speed bumps, so to speak, create a situation where it becomes more important to stay hydrated, go into the race hydrated. But at the end of the day, we want to create products that people will use and that work for the majority of people. And so in this case, the energy gel, our best-selling product, at one point we had 30 flavors, and I think we're down to 27 or 28 now. But whatever you're craving in an event, in a training run, me personally, I like fruit, I like sour, and I like salt. I don't want a dessert gel while I'm running. I live in Florida. It was 91 degrees on Sunday for my workout. I don't want caramel macchiato during a hot workout. I barely want that flavor on a cold workout. I would prefer that flavor in my coffee when I'm not exercising. Pineapple, lemonade, lemon lime, salted watermelon, that's what I like. But not everybody likes that. And if you follow the training plans and you're doing all of your homework, what you'll notice is you're going to have really good workouts and you're going to remember what products and flavors you used for that good workout. And then the next time you have a long run or when the race comes, you're mentally going to call upon that good experience with that flavor. So you're going to save salted chocolate for when the race is the hardest because you remember that you used that flavor during a training run and you had a great experience with it. Sounds kind of, foofy, but it works and there's some science behind it.
Jacob, if I can interrupt for a second.
Sure, of course.
The slide that's showing up is basically just a red line across the screen.
Oh, interesting.
Is there a way to expand that? It sounds
So
like
you
in the chat,
you
that's
guys
what
couldn't
other
see
people are
that.
saying as well. No, unfortunately not.
Interesting. Can you see this slide?
No,
What? So you're seeing a red line across the screen?
correct. The screen's primarily black with a red line, kind of horizontal red line across the middle.
I'm glad that you said that. Oh, my screen sharing is paused. How about this?
There we go. That was,
Technical difficulties. So this was the screen I was on. Can you see this?
Yes. Now we could see it.
So that whole thing made no sense, but now hopefully
No, it makes sense, but we couldn't
much
see
more,
it.
much more context with this slide. Okay, Michael, thank you for that. Not sure what happened, why it happened, but here we are. So I'll stay on this slide for just a few more seconds while you guys kind of stare at the flavor wheel here, which is what I was referring to. I know, Lisa, you might have a few hard copies of this, but for anyone that would like to have this to study it or look at it and save it and know which flavors fall under which category, just let one of us know. We'll make sure that you get your hands on it. Any questions here? Apologies again. Okay. And so going back to, I'm not afraid, I'm not going to shy away from the fact that GOO, what we do at GOO Energy Labs, it's very science-based, it's very lab-based, and we do create those products. We mix them, everything is fine-tuned, and some people tend to call that out as it's a processed product. And yes, it goes through a process to get made, and it's different than eating a celery stick or applesauce during a workout. However, what we have found and what sports scientists have found is that when you're exercising, you're burning and losing specific nutrients. And so these key ingredients we include in the products for key reasons. And so what we know is that your body burns two types of carbohydrates, and some people is familiar with the word glucose, and a lot of people know what fructose is, or fruit sugar. And so we know that those two things are used up immediately while you're exercising. They're absorbed differently in the body, and we'll cover that here in a second, but primary energy source when you're exercising, regardless of what intensity you're exercising at, regardless of what your diet is outside of your exercise sessions. When you're exercising, you're burning carbohydrates. Secondarily, and arguably the most important ingredient and key differentiator in the GOO Energy lineup is that we include branched chain amino acids in 90% of our products. And what those are amino acids that your body doesn't create on its own. Therefore, you must get them from external food sources. And in this case, when we exercise, branched chain amino acids act as an additional energy source. They help with recovery, they help with muscle building, they help with muscle recovery, and we've included them in nearly all of our products. And then we know that sodium is the primary electrolyte lost in sweat, prevents cramping, prevents dehydration, and then caffeine, of course. A little bit controversial, but it's by far and away one of the most successful and prominent exercise enhancing legal supplements that you can take. It does work, and it works more than just in ways of making you feel jittery or giving you energy. It mobilizes fat for fuel, and it actually decreases your perceived effort. So you might not feel like you're working as hard as you actually are, which is good. It improves your mental stamina and ability to focus during exercise. And so to go back to the top, not many other brands talk about this or do this, include these ingredients in their products. And so looking at the graph on the left, the blood glucose levels, time in hours, what happens is your body is able to take in and digest a greater amount of glucose than fructose during exercise. They're absorbed differently. And so this middle graph kind of explains the highway analogy that we use, or the traffic jam analogy, where fructose tends to take an express lane, so to speak, while glucose stays on the main thoroughfare. You're able to absorb roughly 60 grams of carbohydrates or glucose per hour, whereas 30 grams per hour of fructose only, equaling 90 grams, which is wonderful news. Back to the graph on the left, what happens is you have high GI and low GI. Basically, what that means is when you take in carbohydrates, your blood glucose level will increase. You're giving your body energy. You're telling your body, get ready, we're about to exercise, or we're about to expend energy. I'm giving you energy to use. It's ready right away. You don't get the same effect with with fructose. You get a high GI, a high glucose, blood glucose effect with glucose, and you get a low GI effect with fructose. However, not by much, but fructose lasts a little bit longer. And so you're able to exercise longer on the 30 grams per hour of fructose than you would glucose. And so a lot of people reference, the sugar crash or the sugar rush. That's glucose. That's the sugar. Whereas it goes up, you get the high or the sugar rush, and then you get the crash. But the fructose enables it to last a little bit longer. I hope that makes a little bit of sense. But essentially, no matter which product you take of ours, with the exception of the recovery products and the hydration tablets, which are no carbs, no sugar, less than 10 calories. The goal of that is just sodium replenishment. Otherwise, whether you're drinking your nutrition, eating your nutrition, or taking an energy gel, this is the benefit that you're getting with those products. And so I get this question a lot about time, because, and the pandemic is a great example where people picked up different sports, they're doing different exercise, different sports and things like that. And so what happens is they either tend to believe that if you're exercising for less than 30 to 75 minutes, you don't need exercise nutrition, or they forget to change their routine going beyond 2.5 hours. And so to talk about what actually happens during exercise, and we can break it up into short, medium, and long. A short exercise session isn't even on this graph. I would call it less than 30 minutes is the only time when you tend to not need anything. Whatever you ate prior to the exercise session is still with you, likely carried into that 30-minute session, no matter how hard you work out or what your effort is during that exercise session. If it's less than 30 minutes, you likely don't need anything. If anything at all, it's just hydration. And here it says small amounts of carbohydrates or a mouth rinse, which, if you don't know what that is, it's essentially, there's been studies done where instead of ingesting it, chewing and swallowing, you're drinking a carbohydrate beverage, swishing it around in your mouth and spitting it out. And the remnants of the beverage stay in your mouth. I'm not here to say that that's bad or good, but it's a method that some people use. I don't think it's effective when you go beyond 30 minutes. And so a medium exercise session, I think, would be 30 minutes to 2 hours. And so right in the middle of this graph, you'll see how important it is. The longer the exercise session, nutritional training is highly, highly recommended, and single or multiple transportable carbohydrates, fructose and glucose, are essential. And so there are other brands out there that are strictly from fruits, and that's wonderful. But this graph is telling us, and we didn't make this graph, this is from a sports medicine doctor who worked for the Gatorade Science Institute in Chicago, basically telling the story that when you're exercising at a moderate intensity, at a medium duration, call it 1 hour, you can get away with more fructose and less glucose, because it's not crucial that you get the big blood glucose spike. You don't need energy right away. You're not sustaining yet for that ultra endurance, which I would call greater than 2.5 hours. At that point, it's so crucial to use 2 types of carbohydrates, because the longer you exercise, the higher your heart rate becomes. You could be in great shape, but as your speed, everyone, I think, if you've done a half marathon or a marathon, you've experienced this before, where the race feels harder and you might be slowing down. You're not moving faster, but yet the race still feels hard, or it feels harder. It becomes increasingly more difficult to take in any bit of nutrition when you get to that point. And so the nutritional training is absolutely essential, and different types of carbohydrates are warranted. And so when you do Ironmans, like I've done, trail races, similar ultra marathons, they'll have like chicken noodle soup and pretzels and all kinds of other snacks. And you'll notice people just after so many hours, they're craving so much. Their speed tends to go down the longer the duration of the event. And their heart rate sometimes will dip low enough where they can digest some of those foods. But the point of the case is that the longer the effort, the more likely you will have success with multiple types of carbohydrates. And the benefit of that with Goo Energy Labs is we put that in a single product. So you don't need to eat a slice of orange and a pretzel. Goo Energy has both of those ingredients in our products. And so to touch on branched chain amino acids one more time, this is all the benefits that have been notated from branched chain amino acids. And remember, so there's amino acids, essential amino acids, branched chain amino acids, non-essential amino acids your body creates on its own. So of the essential amino acids, there's 3 branched chain amino acids, and not to go chemistry class on you guys, but literally they look like they have branches coming off of them if you were to draw it out like it's a chemistry class. But those 3 branched chain amino acids are leucine, isoleucine, and valine. And what they do specifically, if we were taking a college sports nutrition class, what they would tell us is those 3 branched chain amino acids specifically, they're responsible for that second to last bullet, which is they initiate muscle protein synthesis, which is the recovering and the rebuilding of muscle tissue, not size, not making you bigger and stronger in a literal sense, but they're specifically helping your broken down, torn muscle fibers recovering and rebuilding and coming back stronger, not in size, but in strength. Along with that, recovery, delaying fatigue, improving VO2 max, which is basically your speed and power, strengthening your immune system. And I've never talked to a human being, I coach clients, I come from a personal training background. No one wants to lose muscle. Everyone wants to lose weight. And I think when they say weight, they mean fat. No one wants to lose muscle, especially as you get older. The goal is to protect lean muscle no matter what. And so bringing up the back end here, and equally important, but not talked about quite as with as much emphasis, but staying hydrated and energized. So there are many electrolytes. The primary one lost in sweat is sodium. And so the key here, I know someone will ask me, so I made sure to put it in here, which is the replenishment during activity less than an hour or greater than an hour rather with a sports drink or electrolytes, 300 to 700 milligrams of sodium per hour. And so that's a big range. I know that. And so what that means specifically is that, again, I live in Florida. I'm going to lean much more towards 700 milligrams of sodium per hour via my nutrition plan. So for me, if I'm riding my bike or I'm going for a long run, I'll take a gel and I will be drinking a beverage throughout the course of an hour. And so when an hour has passed, I've taken a gel, I've drinking about 16 ounces of fluid, roughly 350 calories, equaling 550, 600 milligrams of sodium. If it were 29 degrees out and I was wearing like cold weather gear, likely not sweating as much, I wouldn't take in as much sodium. And so if you're training in hot weather, traveling to a cold race or vice versa, you're going to tweak this a little bit. Caffeine, on the other hand, is pretty straightforward, smaller window, 1.3 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. And if I should have put this in here, but if you're concerned with how much you weigh in kilograms, just divide your weight by 2.2. You'll get your weight in kilograms, and then you'll kind of get a sense for how much caffeine to take in 30 to 60 minutes before exercise and the race. Now, I will say, disclaimer, if you're not drinking coffee regularly, or tea or Coke or whatever it is, and you abstain from caffeine throughout your training, not wise to start on race day, because if some people may know this, but caffeine, it moves things in the body, and you might have to go to the bathroom when you don't particularly want to go to the bathroom. So it's equally important, as we were talking, Alan and Mike touched on this, Lisa, but when knowing where the porta potty is, you're eating the same breakfast, you're going to the bathroom at the same time, simplicity and routine. I tend to not worry about when I'm taking caffeine unless my race or my endurance effort is just, it's super hard, or I know that it's going to be hours and hours long. I'll save my caffeine products for the end. But otherwise, I tend to make decisions based on flavor. What am I going to enjoy? What am I going to look forward to at mile 16, 20, and 24? Rather than some people tend to take note that caffeine helps with mental focus, energy, perceived effort, and they're going to save their caffeine gels for the last 30 to 45 minutes of the event. And then last but not least here is beta alanine, which is primarily in the Roctane products, but it increases muscle cellular buffering, which is essentially, it's going to inflate your blood vessels, increasing blood flow. So it's going to severely delay muscle fatigue. And it's the best during fast races, hilly races, when relative to your training, the training day or the race is going to be significantly harder. I'm going to use Florida as an example again. There are no hills here. So if I were traveling to a race where there was going to be hilly, I would make sure to include beta alanine in my training and my race plan, with hopes, fingers crossed, that it would help make my day feel a little bit more manageable. Moving along here, so you've probably heard me mention Roctane Ultra Endurance a couple of times. We make both of these products. If you can picture it, the chocolate, vanilla, tri-berry, strawberry, banana, and the like are all GU energy gels. Salted chocolate, recently cold brew coffee, pineapple, lemonade are all Roctane gels. Still the same dual carbohydrates, still has caffeine in it. There are 3 times more electrolytes, 3 times more BCAAs, with the inclusion of taurine and beta alanine. Not for fast people, not for Olympic athletes. It's for the days and the occasions when you're pushing yourself more than normal relative to you. You could still be a 5-hour marathoner and it still warrant a Roctane Ultra Endurance product. And so we have Roctane gels, we have Roctane drinks, we have Roctane recovery, Roctane capsules, essentially for the occasions when you're sweating more, you're working harder, you're going faster, you're climbing hills, whatever it is that it's more difficult relative to you, Roctane is likely a product that you'll benefit from. And so what this boils down to, again, is, I mentioned this in the beginning, is a lot of people tend to not like the consistency of the energy gel. And so I'm going to throw these words out here. I think they've been used more recently than when I was in school, but the gels and drinks specifically, you're going to hear words hypotonic, isotonic, and hypertonic. And essentially what that means is the hypotonic, which has a lower concentration of fluid than your blood. Isotonic, similar fluid concentration to that of your blood. Hypertonic, which is a higher concentration of fluid, sugar, salt than your blood. So hypertonic, think this is so strong, versus hypotonic, very watered down. Isotonic, you would never taste the difference, but it's similar concentration of fluid, sugars, and salt to your blood. What all that means to you is you got to go out there and practice, and you got to go out there and figure it out, because what works for me may not work for you. And if someone's been doing endurance exercise, practicing sports nutrition, exercise nutrition for decades, they can be more flexible. They can drink a hypertonic drink and an isotonic drink or gel at the drop of a hat. Doesn't matter. They can interchange. Some other people might start out with, I want my products really watered down. I can't handle too much taste. And as they get more experience, they might switch over and do more. This doesn't happen often in running, maybe more so in triathlon and cycling, where some individuals try and jam as many calories as possible in the smallest bottle on Earth, and that's fine. It seems effective in theory. It sounds like it might work, but in reality, your body needs water, and your blood will thicken when you start to exercise, and it will thicken and move slower on super hot days. And so the less water you have and the more calories you take in, it will slowly, slowly, slowly come to a screeching halt in your stomach, and you'll feel it, and you may have to throw up, or you may have to stop altogether until your heart rate calms down and your body thinks, okay, we're recovering now. Blood can go back to the stomach and the gut and help digest all of these calories. So my suggestion is to mess with this, play around with it, see what you think, but always start hypotonic. And what that means with an energy gel is simply you take a 1 ounce energy gel, which is a hypertonic substance, but you drink 6 or 8 ounces of water with it. So you're taking 1 ounce of nutrition and you're drinking 8 times that amount in volume in water. So you're essentially watering it down inside of your own body, effectively making it easier to digest at that point and less of a shock to your system. I hope that makes sense for everyone. And so basically, I can send this out to everyone, but here is a breakdown of the hypotonic, iso, and hyper. So isotonic will start right in the middle, best for carbohydrate release, when to use it, shorter duration or high intensity workouts when you want carbohydrate overhydration during exercise, versus hypotonic, shorter workouts, long rides, hotter weather. I kind of touched on that. And then hyper, best for recovery afterwards or sustained exercise. And what that means is when you're used to what you're doing and you're going to go run for a period of time at the same effort level. Like for sure, I'm running at a very low heart rate, or I'm going to go for a super long walk as a great example. We could all go walk for 1 hour and eat cheeseburgers while we're doing it and probably not have too much backfire in our stomachs. Whereas if we were running, that would obviously backfire quite a bit. And so you play around with this, see what works for you. But my suggestion is to start hypotonic, water down all of your nutrition, or just make sure you're drinking enough water regularly. And so to wrap it up, at GU Energy Labs, I would fail you if I didn't mention some of the things that we do and some of our why and our culture. We come from science backgrounds, and so we're prominent in carbohydrate use, branched chain amino acids. Even though we process all of our gels, there are no artificial colors or flavors. We offer a variety of flavors, options, caffeine, non-caffeine, electrolyte content. Most products are vegan, all are kosher, and we have at least some options. All the products are offered in some fashion gluten-free as well. Not many people know this, but we do have the informed choice grade on our products. And so from an exercise or sports nutrition background, all of the highest quality products should have the informedchoice.org logo on them, essentially meaning that we've passed all the tests that need to be passed. This is clean, this is effective, and you will benefit from it. And then if you haven't heard, we've partnered for 5 years now with a company called TerraCycle. Our gel packages in particular are not recyclable. And that bothers us. And so we partnered with a company that actually helps us upcycle our packages. And so free of charge to you, you could create an account, download a shipping label, save all of your wrappers, box them up in a shoebox, ship them off. And then these products, these wrappers are, and not just our wrappers, any packaging is then upcycled and reused for city parks, all sorts of things. So if you want more information on that, I can surely send it your way. Couple more slides to go over just want to recap some of the important things here. Carbs provide energy before, during, and after exercise. Carbs are your friend. The carb blend that we talked about is glucose and or maltodextrin plus fructose. It's what makes the energy available in your body. Sodium, primary electrolyte lost in sweat, aids in hydration. Caffeine gives you energy, but it mobilizes fat, makes you feel like you're not working as hard as you are. Branched chain amino acids, remember, these are amino acids your body cannot create on its own, so therefore you need it through food. Recovery nutrition is super important. One thing to remember here is carbs are most important directly after a workout. Yes, that means beer as well. Whereas protein is more important the further you are away from post-exercise. So when you finish a workout within 30 minutes, protein is negligible. Carbs are most important. After 30 minutes or an hour, really there's no protein window. At any point after, long time after your workout, protein is more important. Remember, when you take in carbs, you're giving your body energy, and you're basically saying, get ready, we're going to go do something. When you eat fat and protein, you're not sending that message to your body. So just remember that. And hydration, 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 practice, practice, practice. Okay, so 3 more slides. Mike, how are we doing on time? Because these are important, but not, I don't want to take away from some of the questions. Okay, so for those of you that want a deeper dive, this is a very light slide, but how important are certain things to your training and racing? What to eat, when to eat, how much to eat. Your everyday diet is by far and away the most important thing that you need to worry about. We've spent time talking about before, during, and after exercise. What you're doing in your diet will have a greater impact on how you feel during your workouts and your races than what any gel that you take 5 minutes before. Once you kind of nail down everyday diet, then we can talk about exercise or sports nutrition. And then at the very top of the pyramid, it may not make a huge difference unless the bottom 2 levels are pretty much nailed in, is the supplements. And that, what I mean there is electrolyte capsules, BCAA capsules. We make magnesium. You might be taking a multivitamin. All of that is well and good. But if you're not hitting home runs, or at least ground rule doubles, you're getting on base with everyday diet and sports nutrition, supplements tend to not matter as much. And some nutrition planning tips. I know we saw a couple of questions. What to eat the night before the race morning. How should I use any sports nutrition product? And so our rule of thumb is, it can be complex or we can keep it very simple, which is essentially you're hydrating 2 hours out, you're eating 3 hours out, you're taking a gel 5 minutes before. If you really want to split hairs, we can talk about how many ounces per pounds you weigh, so on and so forth. And so my recommendation is your largest meal leading up to a marathon, just like your best night's sleep. The night that you're going to plan the most sleep, the best sleep, is Friday night for a Sunday race. Your biggest meal, in my opinion and experience, from what I've read and worked with clients, is going to be Friday night as well. So how nice is that? You're going to eat your biggest meal Friday night, and then you're going to go try and get the best sleep you can. For a Sunday morning race, this happens Friday night. Your second biggest meal will be breakfast the following morning, followed by a good lunch. When you eat a giant meal the night before a race, especially when let's say you haven't been doing that all training, every night before a long run, you've been eating a normal dinner. And then the night before your big marathon race, you paid money, you've traveled, people are there to watch you, you're going to eat the biggest bowl of spaghetti you've ever seen in your life. That likely will backfire. And so my suggestion is Friday night before a Sunday morning race. You're eating your biggest meal, then breakfast and lunch, but treat every long run as if it's a mini version of the actual race. And so what I've done, and this sounds chaotic, but it will create a routine of simplicity for you. Every weekend, let's say your long run is on a Sunday, that's the same day the race is going to be. How about that? The Friday night before, you're going to practice eating your big dinner. You're going to practice eating a big breakfast Saturday morning. You're going to practice eating a good lunch Saturday afternoon. You're going to eat a light dinner Saturday evening, and you're going to wake up feeling good, going to the bathroom at a normal time, feeling like a normal person the morning of your long run. That's my suggestion there. And so some common FAQs, these might be some of the ones that we'll cover here in a minute, but does liquid energy, so we make a liquid energy product, does this replace hydration? No, it doesn't. Like now you don't have to drink water. It's completely false. You need water always. Water helps digestion. Water helps the movement of all of these ingredients and nutrients through the body. Another question we get is, can you take too many GU products or sports nutrition products, and can I combine? Can I use different products in different ways, or can I use gels and chews in a race? I know a lot of people on when they go for long bike rides, they like to start out drinking and eating chews, but they'll switch to gels later on in the ride because they're tired, they want to worry about it, a little easier to take in. The answer is yes. These products are designed to be used together in combination with each other. I can't speak entirely to like a GU gel and Moreton gel or Hammer Nutrition. I assume yes, because the goal of sports nutrition is to give you exactly what you're needing and burning and using during exercise. So in theory, yes, but ultimately it's going to boil down to practice. How many calories should one consume per hour? What's the max while exercising? The general recommendation, again, you'll figure this out when you start practicing in trial and error, is 100 to 300 calories per hour. Not entirely dependent on how much you weigh, but how much your body can absorb. For beginner marathoners, they will slowly gain more and more ability to absorb nutrients during exercise. You go for your first long run ever, your body is already dealing with so much that it doesn't want to digest calories. It thinks it's dying. So the last thing it wants to worry about is digesting anything. 4 calories equals 1 gram of carbohydrates, and you can train your gut to tolerate more. It just takes a ton of time. How many fluids, electrolytes should someone consume per hour? What's the max? We covered this a little bit, 300, I think I said earlier 700, but 300 to 800 or 300 to 700 milligrams of sodium per hour is ideal. In a non-exercise scenario, you don't want to go over 2,300 milligrams per day. Typically, some people can suffer from hyponatremia or hyper, which is too much or too low sodium. But if for the sake of this conversation, during exercise, you could do 800 milligrams per hour because you're exercising and you're burning that, it's not gonna hurt you any bit. And so if you're wondering, not to sing the GU song, but I'll make my sales pitch or my lean here a little bit, but what sets us apart: born in the lab, family-owned company. We remove antioxidants for a specific reason, portable and palatable. We rely on science. The goal of sports nutrition is to have a life after your workout. So preventing and minimizing the damage during exercise is the goal. It is important. Organic, whole versus processed foods. We're breaking down natural ingredients to their most basic form for efficiency. That's the basis of what our sports nutrition is. And so we take exactly what your body is needing, whether you get it from a piece of bread or an energy gel. We've just broken it down so it's more easily digestible and easily absorbed. So the one ingredient on the back of our labels is sodium benzoate, which is a preservative. This enables our products to be shelf stable and have an expiration date that allows it to just sit on shelves at your favorite running stores or in your pantry until it's ready to be used. It is not dangerous. It's for food safety, and it's a preservative used due to the lack of pasteurization. So if for those that tend to read labels and you see this, I thought I'd do you a solid and tell you what it is so that you were aware. But I hope I didn't go too fast, Mike, but that's all I've got. Happy to push it back over to you and we can cover some questions.
Yeah. No, and there's a couple of great points that Jacob put in there that I just want to circle back to. So again, this whole process of practicing everything, those of you who have run with my training team pace group, people tend to notice that even early in the season on some of our shorter runs, I'm taking energy gels throughout the race because I'm training for ultra marathons and you really do have to kind of train your gut. And so I have a recurring, for me, it's 30 minutes. I'm a bigger guy. I weigh over 200 pounds and the races I'm training for last a really long time. So I found that that's kind of what I need. As far as timing, some of you, it may be more than like 45 minutes that you're going to take your gels. That's a little bit personal, but practicing taking that throughout the long runs, drinking water throughout the long runs, getting used to those things. Sometimes Jacob talked about kind of absorption rates and how much we can take on. Sometimes there's that temptation to, on the race course, you've run 20 minutes. Now there's a water stop. You're going to drink a ton of water and then you're going to run 20 minutes. And that can lead to some of the bloating and some of the gastric distress that people sometimes get. Whereas if you're sipping and you're spreading it out over time, and you can do this with the gel packet too, especially if you're carrying water on your body in a hydration pack or a bottle or whatever, you don't have to down the entire packet at once. You can take a little bit, drink a little bit, take a little bit, drink a little bit later in the race when maybe your stomach's bothering you and that you're still getting the calories on board. And that's better than nothing. Mixing and matching the products. Also, we get this question all the time in the store. People see that the salted energy gels have more sodium and they're like, that's good, right? And it's like, well, we want to strike a balance here. Maybe if you're planning to take 6 gels through the course of your race, maybe you want 2 or 3 of them to be the salted ones and 2 or 3 of them to be the normal ones. Same with the Roctane products. You can mix some of that in. Another thing that came up, Jacob mentioned kind of early in his presentation about that shorter exercise where you swish carbohydrate in your mouth and spit it out and there's still a benefit. That's something that I've read and heard about too. And that's something that late in the race, if you're really not feeling like you can get anything down, maybe it's worth a try. Like the Gatorade cups on the side of the course, that's going to be better than nothing. You can at least gargle it because the message there is the brain's hearing, ooh, there's stuff coming. I can exert myself a little bit more, and it kind of removes some of those internal limiters. And you're not taking the nutrition on board, but you're almost tricking your race or your brain to get through those last 2 or 3 miles of the race. So that's a little pointer, because one of the common themes in a lot of the questions we got was, how do I get stuff down if my stomach's bothering me? But practicing all of this, training the hydration, training the nutrition, getting used to digesting those things throughout your race or throughout your training, so it's not as much of a surprise on race day. And then also the other point I'll make is periodically when I do an intense workout in the middle of the week, I'll actually take some nutrition mid-workout too, so that you're practicing taking that on board at a higher, more race pace or faster than race paced exertion. That's not necessarily something you'd always need to do, but again, just we want to practice and see what's working for us. So some questions we got. We talked about the timing of eating prior to a race. And I agree with that. And that's been my experience too, that eating those bigger meals a little further removed than is conventionally thought is what your body's actually asking for. But as far as the actual contents of those, Alan, you've run a couple marathons. Jacob, you've done some triathlons, long endurance events. Are there favorite meals or favorite things that people have had success with?
Yeah, I mean, it boils down. I think it goes just back to like socks and shoes, right? You have your preference, you have your favorite. For me, it's pizza. I mean, and I would prefer it to be a certain type of pizza, but I know that if I'm doing a race in the middle of nowhere, I can tend to find a pizza place, right? So like the simplicity of making sure your meal, if you like something, that you're able to get your hands on it wherever you are. So if you really love a good T-bone steak and you're in the middle of, nowhere, can you find that meal that you've been leaning on? And so from a science standpoint, yeah, I suggest to people, I should say, my clients and those that I work with, um, that it's a little bit more carb heavy, and some people like chicken and vegetables or chicken and pasta. But again, I remind people that like that in and of itself is great, but can you find it pre-race? Are you going to be able to find your oatmeal and banana, or bagel and banana? Luckily, the good news about that is it's such a good nutritional pre-race product, and most hotels, for instance, in their continental breakfast offer bagels, bananas, and oatmeal, so you can get relatively lucky. Alan, I don't know, you can speak to the 7 marathons. Do you do the same thing for all 7? Do you have your favorite?
Yeah, it kind of depends. Honestly, it's playing the game of the time as well too, when the marathon's going to start. So I've started marathons where they start at 7. I've started where they start at 10. So that kind of changes my approach a little bit as well. But much like you said, I always want to make sure I have access to whatever like that I do with regularly on race day as well too. And sometimes again, if I know that the race is going to carry a particular hydration or fuel, I have enough practice that just in case I have to resort to that as well too. So I may have a particular one I like, but I'm also going to explore potentially the idea if something goes wrong and I need to use something else. Prime example, I ran the New York Marathon and I had a gel stuck in my sleeve, and I reached for water and I shot out my gel, and it was, oh, there goes that gel. So I'll have to adapt in that particular situation. So at least I was aware of what was available. So just trying to minimize those potential unknowns as much as I can.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. And that just goes back to reading the pre-race literature, because that'll generally be on the race's website well in advance, knowing what they have, knowing when it falls in the race. Maybe it's going to line up perfectly for you as far as your kind of pace strategy for the race, where that gel's at. Maybe other times it's going to be, I'm going to grab that gel from the aid station, I'm going to put it in my pocket, and then I'm going to take it a mile or two later at a subsequent water stop, because that lines up with my fueling needs and timing a little bit better. But it is good to know what's on the course. There are some on-course hydration products that do not work well for me, and there's others that work really, really well. And for example, my marathon PR is currently from the St. Jude Memphis Marathon. And when I ran it in 2019, they had noon on course. And I was really excited when I saw that, because I was like, that's easy on my stomach. I can take that down. And I was alternating water, noon between each aid station. And that worked really, really well. Whereas kind of other races, when I go out, sometimes I'm carrying a bottle of hydration mix that I like and a bottle of water. So just kind of looking at that, how hot is it going to be? How frequent are the aid stations? Is this going to work for me, or do I want to carry my own products with me? For almost every runner, unless you're an elite athlete, you are going to want to carry some of your own gels with you on pretty much any half marathon or marathon course. Typically for a half marathon, there's one nutrition product on course, and for marathon, it's 2 or 3 times. And most of us are not running fast enough that that's going to meet our needs. So we are going to want to carry something and practice and rehearse that ahead of time. So we got this question. I mentioned we got a few questions about just energy products not sitting well in people's stomachs, whether that's from cramping. We've talked a little bit about training the gut. And I do believe in that, and I do believe that that works. And I've personally had some success with that. I know Jacob mentioned the liquid energy product, and that is something that we started stocking a few months ago at the U City store. And that is really nice. It goes down very smoothly. It's kind of like drinking a Capri Sun. Again, you want to supplement that with some water, but it's not that sludge-like. So that is a product that I would encourage people to try out. But you do need to do something. Just saying gels don't work for me, I'm not going to take a nutrition product mid-race, that's not going to set you up for success. Pre-race, you can top off the tank with things like chews, especially depending on what time you're eating breakfast, because whatever you eat for breakfast, you want to make sure you have time to use the restroom and clear out anything that's going to want to move on before the race starts. And when we start running and exercising, we're pulling blood away from our GI system, and that that does lead to some of that gastric distress. So we want to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves. But I personally eat a pack of chews normally, depending on the race. And again, this is knowing where's your start corral, how big is the race, how long is it going to be from when the gun goes off to when my wave actually starts. So sometimes I'm eating these 10 minutes before the gun goes off. Sometimes, like Go St. Louis, when I'm in corral E or F and such, I'm like, okay, there's going to be 10 minutes from when the gun goes off until I actually start. So I'm just going to take my gels then. Because there have been a couple races where the gun went, or the race didn't start on time because there were issues with the police scanning the course and they found something that morning and they delayed the start time. So kind of be prepared for those things. But any other suggestions for kind of handling the upset stomach?
We have a product, our electrolyte capsule has ginger root extract. And so you might have heard your grandparents tell you growing up, or your parents saying ginger ale soothes an upset stomach. If you tend to have pre-race nerves and a tight stomach that you just can't seem to get to relax, anything with ginger will help, right? And so like same thing with like seasickness, the ginger candies or the ginger capsules will help. But a lot of times, and I don't mean this is maybe as funny as it sounds, but if, like Mike said, there's always something for someone. I think that there can't be a situation where literally nothing works for one individual. And it might be you practicing, it might be you trying 20 different products until you land on one that's like, you know what, this works for me. And I'll admit the gel isn't for everyone, but I think now we're 21st century, there's enough products out there that there is something for everyone. And sometimes it boils down to this fear factor analogy where like some people just have this mental fixation where like the moment a gel hits their tongue, they revolt, and like this, like it's the most disgusting thing that could hit their tongue or stomach. And that's valid. Sometimes that happens, but also with the liquid energy, with chews, with the Stroop waffles, with drinks, you could drink your nutrition. It might mean that you now have to carry a fuel belt, and you're running with mini water bottles strapped to your belt loops, but you're getting your nutrition in some way. And I would bet that the more that you do it, the more you practice, the longer you're running, the greater experience you gain, your ability to take in different types of nutrition will grow as well.
And mixing it up a bit too. So for example, I don't know if this is true or not, but my personal sensation is most of the fruit flavored gels sit easier and feel like they're a little thinner consistency. They're easier on the stomach than some of the more chocolate dessert flavored gels are. So that's something that I've personally found good luck with. And then another thing that I commonly hear talking to people in the store or whatever is they'll say, well, I'm good with gels for X number of miles or X number of hours, and then things start to go a little bit sideways. And that's valid. The body's working harder later in the race, but that doesn't mean swear off the gels. Let's just think of a strategy to get you through the whole race. So maybe that's taking gels for the first 2 hours of the first half marathon and then switching over to liquid energy. Or maybe that's carrying something else with you, and maybe you do have to walk through a water stop in the second half of the race at one point to get that other product down, but you're still getting those calories on board, you're digesting it, and by consuming something, you're setting yourself up to be able to continue to perform instead of doing the slow walk, the survival walk all the way to the finish line. But you do have to kind of adapt it to the temperature. I know, again, personally, if it's really hot outside, my stomach is far more likely to be picky. When it's in the 30s, when it's in the 40s, I can eat pretty much whatever I want on a race course and my body's happy with that. So knowing the weather conditions, unfortunately here in St. Louis, where a lot of us are training for the Go St. Louis Marathon in early April, the weather could be freezing. or it could be 80 degrees. And in the past 5 years, it's been all of the above. So we do have to, but as we've gone through this training block too, we've experienced those temperature swings. So we kind of want to just try out different things. Jacob had mentioned earlier, taking notes on, I just had a great workout. I crushed it. What did I do? What did I use? And remembering that, like, hey, it was 80 degrees outside. This didn't work for me. Hey, it was 80 degrees. This worked really well. Keep a diary of those things so that you can pack for that. And then especially if you are traveling for a race, take some things with you. Like, I pack my breakfast. I know what I'm going to eat that morning and I travel with that. I also pack some snack products that I'm going to take the day before. So I know what restaurants I can eat at. I know what's familiar, but make it all predictable, make it all comfortable, so that you know what you're using. We have another question. So we talked about post-run nutrition and the need to balance carbohydrate and protein. We want those carbs right away to help refill the gas tank, which has been depleted. And then we want the protein later to help with muscle recovery and repair. But one of our questions is any recommendations for good sources of that protein?
Yeah, I have many good suggestions. It might depend on if you prefer animal protein versus plant-based, but this science will tell you that by far and away the best protein that you can consume is a whey protein isolate, which essentially means if you see isolate on the package, it's the cleanest. It's been filtered one additional time or something to that effect, where it's the absolute cleanest protein your body can take in. It likely will be low in carbohydrates and a decent amount of protein. Your body won't know what to do with more than 20 grams of protein per serving. So if just because it says 50 grams of protein per serving doesn't mean that it's good. I would look for 15 to 25 per serving, and there are many great brands out there, but a whey protein isolate with that informed choice label on the back would be ideal. And at any point after your workout, beyond an hour, like if you're hungry for real food after a workout, eat real food. Like Mike said, you're going to want to replenish your glycogen. You've got to refill the gas tank. Worry about protein later. There is no real protein window. Anytime you take in protein, your body will gladly accept it.
Great. Alan, I'm going to throw the ball in your court and we're going to talk about shoes for a second. So one of our questions, what is your recommendation for transitioning into new running shoes as you train and prepare for race day?
Oh gosh, that's a great one. So obviously, again, much like we've just touched on nutrition, footwear kind of falls in that same category. You want to explore what you want to use race day, whether that's you're going to use the same shoe you've been training in, or if you're going to switch shoes, you want to have some familiarity with it. Common rule of thumb, obviously, you really don't want to break in a new shoe that day, race day, or even that week leading up to it. You want to have some experience in it. So I would say that really, if you're going to target trying a new shoe or explore getting a new update of the shoe that you already have, that you really try to get it, probably that 3 to 4 week window outside of when that race is, so you can get your last few long runs in it, so you can get, not necessarily break it in, because shoes don't really have so much as a break-in process anymore, but you get that familiarity with it. And again, not every shoe is exactly the same, simply said. So you want to just make sure that you're paired well with that particular shoe. And the same point, which will kick it to Lisa, is what is the sock choice you're going with, and how does that match up with the shoe as well for race day? So eliminating that variable so you don't potentially have any irritations, blisters, anything like that popping up. So I'll just pass the buck on to Lisa to kind of talk on the sock side of things.
Yeah, thank you. I would assume with this group, you would probably already know that cotton is rotten and it keeps the moisture in. So you definitely want a synthetic sock. With features, we have 3 different weights. And so that's what's nice. You can figure out, okay, if your shoe's a little bit more tight fitting, you might want a thinner sock, or vice versa. And it just kind of depends on what you like. But I would try them out in advance, just like the shoes, and figure out what kind of weight you like to race in and what you feel is best. Then there's also merino, but I'd probably stick with the regular synthetic ones. Our elites have the targeted compression, and they don't really move, they don't bunch, and so they really avoid the blisters. And that's the key here, is you definitely just want to keep the moisture away, wick it away, and so you just want it to have a snug fit. So definitely check that out and figure out which weight you want.
And then that's too, just thinking about what the race conditions are. Is it a really hot day? Are you going to
Sure.
be doing, like, are we running on the trails and we're doing a trail race and we're going to be doing some stream crossings? That can factor into the shoe and the sock selection as well. But as Alan said, and this is something that just working in the stores is a common misperception, is people will come in and they'll assume that every Brooks shoe fits the same, and they can just switch from their whatever model they're training in that goes through the glycerin to something like the Hyperion Tempo or Hyperion Elite for race day. And brands tend to fit reasonably similarly with their molds throughout models, but there are differences. And even if the fit's identical, the different foams have different amounts of bounce, and our stride might respond a little bit differently. So we want to practice all of that. And that is something to think about too when you're setting your goals for the race. Is what are my goals? Do I want to cross the finish line, or do I have more performance oriented goals where I'm really all in and I'm chasing a time or a podium spot? Because there's definitely the super shoes on the market, and then there's a class of non-carbon plated super shoes, but that are still just lighter, more energetic feeling. And so we might want to try out some of those. And if you're kind of switching to a different category of shoe, I guess that's something that you definitely want to make sure you're getting more practice in. If you've been running in the Brooks Ghost for 2 years and you're just going to get another pair and it's another version of the Ghost 14, which you've been using, yeah, more likely than not, you're going to be perfectly fine out of the box. But just, you don't want to have questions in your mind on race day. You want to know, hey, I'm comfortable with this. I know what I'm getting myself into. So I think we've, in spirit, hit on all of the questions that were submitted on the RSVP platform. At this point, I do want to open it up and see if any of our participants have additional questions or anything they'd like clarification on. Is there anything our panelists would like to say before we wrap up?
Just
Oh,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I just wanted to mention, a lot of people don't know that there's pacers available, and as for new people, and it's really important because with most half marathons and marathons, they're going to have pacers. And so there's usually a lead pacer, and then there's a tail. So they can really help you with keeping your time, and they can kind of say, okay, we're getting ready for a hill, or, they know the course super well, and they can really lead you to really have just a much better experience. So if they're at the expo, talk to them, pick their brain. And also another thing is visit the expo, go the day before, get prepared, get your bib, get everything done. And that way you're not rushing around race day. Anyway, just a thought there.
Sorry, I accidentally hit the button there for a second. But yes, that's a very good point. I was trying to click on the chat and I hit the record button. My apologies. Yeah, Lisa's comment about pacers, and Go St. Louis this spring does have pacers, both for the half and the full marathon. And so that's a great resource. Any other thoughts or comments?
I was just going to say, thanks for having me. I know that it's a weeknight, and listening to people talk about anything for more than an hour can sometimes be a lot and overwhelming. So much appreciated.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank all of our panelists for being here and taking the time to share their knowledge with the group. I hope this was educational and informative, and appreciate all of you who submitted questions in advance for helping steer this conversation. So we wish everyone the best as they continue training this season, and we look forward to seeing you out there at our Sunday long runs. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good luck with